So Armored Core Nexus made the largest structure changes the franchise has seen up to this point. And while Nexus simply overhauled the core formula, there are some games in the series that make some changes so large that they almost feel gimmicky. Armored Core 2 Another Age, for example, was a 103 mission long expansion that completely removed the arena for the sake of mission variety. But you know what they haven't done? A game where they got rid of the missions and entirely focused on the arena. That is, until now. This is Armored Core 9breaker, a fully arena-focused AC game. So how did FromSoftware go about pulling this off, and how did it work out? Well, let's talk about it. And before getting too far into the video, I should mention that this is the 9th in a series of videos where I'm playing every Armored Core game for the first time and reviewing them as I go along. And while it isn't necessary to have seen the previous videos to enjoy this one, you'll be missing a lot of important context in regards to my personal journey with the franchise if you haven't seen them, so I'll have the full playlist linked in the description below for those of you that want to go check those out first. But with that out of the way, Armored Core 9breaker is a standalone expansion for Armored Core Nexus, released only 7 months after the base game. And like I said before, this game was something entirely new for the franchise, because it has cut the single-player campaign completely and fully focused in on the arena. And this is going to be a very interesting video because, as many of you know by now, the arena is consistently one of, if not my favorite part of the Armored Core games. So while I was hesitant about this game, I was also really curious to see whether I would like it or not. The story of the game is actually not considered canon by FromSoftware, which is completely fine because it might as well be absent to begin with. The general concept here is that the world is in a rare time of peace where no conflict is currently ongoing, and you, the player, are participating in a program that will refine and hone the skills of Ravens so that they will be prepared when there inevitably is another war. So starting up the game for the first time, I loaded into the menu, went to check out the shop, and it doesn't exist. There is no shop in 9breaker. There is a very large selection of parts that you have available in the garage from the very beginning to work with, and you can earn certain parts as rewards later as you go along. And while I thought that this was really strange at first, I kind of liked this system in the context of this game. Having a purely arena-based game means that there's a lot more freedom in terms of viable builds here, considering that you don't have to worry about things like longevity or ammo quite as much. So the game just allowing you to experiment from the very start was actually pretty nice. I don't think a system like this would work in literally any other Armored Core game, but I honestly liked it here. But getting into the core structure of the game, the first thing I noticed was the training section of the menu. Here, there are 3 broad categories of training exercises and 3 smaller challenge sets within each of those to improve certain skills of yours, such as your aim, your ability to dodge missiles, whatever it might be. You can even earn bronze, silver, and gold medals in every challenge, so if you want to push yourself to become an Armored Core god, you can work towards gold medals in every single challenge. You also get new parts awarded to you for completing full challenge sets, so for example, if you complete every heat management challenge, you can earn yourself a high-end radiator. It's fairly rewarding, and I think that the idea here is pretty solid. But while I dabbled around in these a little bit, these are really just here to train new players in the basics of the game, so I didn't put that much time into them. Next, there's of course the arena itself, and the way that you rank up in the arena is new, but I actually enjoyed it a good bit. It works off of a system called Arena Points, which is literally just the Raven Point system from Nexus but renamed. And you start out with practice matches, just putting you up against random low-end ACs to fight so that you can earn some arena points to climb the ranks with. And occasionally, after a practice match, you'll be invited to an official match where you can earn a lot more credits, but these are often against pilots that are a considerably higher rank than you. And while I appreciate the Raven and arena point systems from Nexus and 9breaker, I still think that just having that straight 1 to 30 climb is really satisfying in the older games' arenas. And I'm really hoping that this isn't a change that's going to stick with the franchise for all that long, because while I do feel like these are more representative of your personal skill and journey through the game, there's something just so innately satisfying about climbing through every single opponent to work your way to the top. But getting into my first match, I was actually shocked by how quickly my first opponent was moving around the arena. Typically in these games, the first opponent you fight barely even knows how to walk around the room, so I was taken back a little bit when my first opponent seemed to actually know what they were doing. Not to say that they were incredibly difficult or anything, but it was just a warning sign that this game might be more difficult than I had expected. And something that I have to throw into this video is a core system in Nexus that I never knew existed until the comments told me so. And this is the tuning system that exists for your individual AC parts. So thank you to Carlos in the comments of the last video for letting me know that this even exists. On every frame part of your AC, you can fine tune it towards certain stats to min-max exactly what strengths you want that part to have. It's not much of a difference per part, but a fully tuned AC can play pretty differently from an untuned one, and it did end up coming in clutch a couple of times throughout my playthrough of Ninebreaker. But back to actually playing the game, I was dabbling around with training exercises, and I discovered that completing enough challenges would unlock entirely new categories of them for you to dig deeper into. And also while I was playing around with these, I realized that there's an additional strength to the system that I never realized earlier. Each of these challenges will not only teach newer players foundational skills that they need to progress through the arena, but it will also teach them how to build ACs towards certain strengths. For example, for the accuracy challenges, you might want to use sniper rifles, or for the heat management challenges, you should probably make an AC with as much cooling on it as possible. I tried out of curiosity to complete an accuracy challenge with shotguns, and yeah, don't do that. It teaches beginners how to focus on building an AC that will directly address the challenge they're up against, or that can make up for a certain lack of skill that they might have in a specific area. There's also a new system in the game called appellations, which, congratulations FromSoft, you managed to teach me a new word with this game. Whenever you reach a total amount of arena points between your training exercises and arena matches, you'll be rewarded a new appellation, which is just a fancy word for a title. One thing I wish they included with this system is poses. The top 30 arena pilots all have these cool, unique poses of their own, and honestly, if the player could unlock some of these by progressing through the game, it would actually be a really nice touch. The appellation system is perfectly fine on its own for what it is, but unlocking these poses as you progress could have just been that little cherry on top of the customization here. These poses do add a nice personality to the top 30 pilots, which is something that this game sorely lacks. You know how I talk about this with every arena in the series? Well, here we go. Ninebreaker's pilots have genuinely no personality outside of these poses. You know those bios that I praise for describing what the pilots are like in games like AC2 or AC3? Well, they're gone. Completely gone. Not even a generic blurb about the pilot's fighting style in the arena either, just entirely gone. So there was absolutely nothing attaching me to these opponents or giving me a remote reason to care about them outside of how many arena points I would earn from defeating them. And while we're talking negatives, both the dual wielding jank that I mentioned in the Nexus video and the heat system changes are left completely unchanged here. Now, people in the comments of the last video did mention that the delay on the left-hand weapons might have been included to balance out the dual wielding system, and that's completely fair, and it very well could be the case. But it just feels so weird, man. Like, I don't know. I personally just can't seem to get past it while dual wielding weapons. I also got some comments helping me understand how to work around the heat changes, and I did get a lot better at managing them during this game, but aerial battles were pretty much non-existent in this game, even with me knowing how to maximize my cooling on my build. So even at its absolute best, it still removes one of the most intense and stylish parts of AC on AC combat in the franchise. But let's turn to positives again. In Armored Core Ninebreaker, you no longer get to choose what map you want to fight your opponents on, and I actually think this is a great change. I've mentioned in previous videos that using maps like the parking garage to cheese fights you're struggling with kinda sucks, but if players are allowed to do it, the vast majority of them will, and even I was guilty of it from time to time. This change completely takes the opportunity of cheese away from the players, and while I personally do love the option to just play my favorite map over and over, I do ultimately think that this is a change for the better while moving forward with the franchise. And speaking of maps, a handful of Armored Core 3 and Silent Line maps have been ported straight into this game, and I'm particularly glad because Military District from Silent Line makes a return here. Is it selfish to praise reused content just because part of that reused content is a personal favorite of yours? Yes. Am I doing it anyway? Absolutely. Some parts from both Gen 1 and 2 have also been either remade or just ported directly over to this game, and it's pretty fun just for the sake of adding variety to the customization of the ACs. I was particularly happy to see that big tank core from AC2 with the laser orbits make a return, because it was a strong favorite of mine in that game, and I got to abuse it again here with the benefits of part tuning included, only making it even better. But back to my arena climb, there really isn't much to talk about for the majority of it. It took me a little under 3 hours in total to go from the bottom rank to the top, and I was unfortunately able to beat the 9 breaker on the first try, meaning I don't really have any sort of great triumph story about it. But then I was confused because after beating them, I was just returned to the menu as if nothing really happened. No credits, no congratulations, nothing. So I took to Google real quick just to make sure that there was no proper ending for this game, and I learned that there was, but you didn't get it from beating the arena. See, the completion criteria for this game isn't becoming the 9 breaker. It's completing every single training exercise. What the fuck? And remember when I said that completing a certain amount of exercise will unlock new ones? Well, I also Googled how many challenges there were to complete in total. 150. There are 150 training exercises to complete in order to beat this game. Fantastic. So I sat down, fully prepared to do what I had to do, and I trained. I trained for hours. And get this, Armored Core 9 Breaker is a longer game than Nexus was. Much longer. In fact, it's the second longest game in the franchise so far, only taking me a couple hours less to complete than Another Age did. And that's not a good thing, because the quality of content that made up my 13 hours of playtime here was mostly abysmal. About the first 3 hours of my time with the game was climbing the ranks of the arena and having a really good time doing so, but then the latter 10 hours of it was just grinding away at training exercises on loot. And I wasn't even aiming for gold medals, I was just aiming to complete them once and move on. And there were some really annoying exercises in there. There was heat management, where you had to avoid missiles while boosting around the room, with the ambient temperature in the room slowly rising the entire time, and if you overheat a single time, you have to restart the exercise. There was proper distance, where you had to stay a certain distance away from a little flying drone, either running away from it or chasing it down depending on what direction it's moving in. And evade special missiles, where you had to avoid things like micro missile clusters for 2 minutes straight without getting hit 15 times, but the missile clusters were 5 apiece and shot out every couple seconds. So you could potentially only get hit 3 times in 2 minutes and need to start over entirely. And some of the challenges here are just blatant filler. Like how there was a whole set of challenges based around destroying targets with no radar, then another set based around destroying them without lock-on, and then one where you have to destroy them without your radar and your lock-on. It's just a blatant way of extending the playtime by 15 to 30 minutes without making any new content, and it is just as obnoxious as it sounds. But finally, I got down to challenge number 150, and it was finally time to be done. The challenge was to make your way through the course, defeating the AC at the end, all within the time limit, and I had already just completed 4 of these, so I had a pretty good build made for it. I went through like normal, and then when I got to the end, we got another appearance from our old friend. And poor old 9ball, he had such a badass entrance just to get destroyed within 20 seconds by my purple menace that was tailor-made to destroy ACs as quickly as possible. But then finally, the ending of the game appeared. And all that I got for it was some text on a screen congratulating me for having completed the course and saying that I would be important the next time that a conflict breaks out. Thank you, FromSoft. Fantastic ending for all that work. So overall, I wasn't against the idea of 9 Breaker to begin with, and I actually enjoyed the first few hours of doing what I thought the whole game would be based around. But the twist that completing this game actually requires completing every single training exercise, along with just the atrocious experience of doing so, completely ruined the game for me. And you know what's worse than being a boring game? Being a boring game that is way longer than it needs to be. The idea wasn't bad to start, but making the arena the optional component and the training the mandatory component is the single decision that ruined this entire game, and I cannot fathom who possibly could have come up with that idea. And the fact that this was a game that cost $50 at the time of its release, absolutely nothing in the world could convince me that that price tag is worth it. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give Armored Core 9breaker a 4.7. But what do you guys think? Those of you that have played the game, those of you learning about it for the first time through this video, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, a comment, a subscription, anything to let me and the algorithm know that you did enjoy. It helps me out a lot, so I'd really appreciate it. And if you didn't already know, I stream almost every single day right here on the channel, and recently we've been playing through things like Armored Core 6, Starfield, and Baldur's Gate 3, so feel free to stop by sometime and say hi. And hey, if you enjoyed this video and you haven't seen them already, then you definitely enjoy the rest of my Armored Core videos, so I'll have the playlist linked right here on screen.